Hi everybody, welcome back to today's stream. Today we are going to talk about Azure Active Directory, and this is the new video in the series Managed Identity, where we are discussing cloud-based managed identities, where we abstract out all the credentials, storage, and everything related to users outside of our application in the cloud. So I would request, if you have not previously seen the previous videos, just click on the card on the top right and you will see a link to view the previous video where we have discussed briefly. So far we have had a discussion on managed identities and a basic introduction, why and where and how do we use. We have started with the hands-on labs and we have discussed about AWS Cognito with a complete hands-on lab with detailed steps and everything that you need to do to get you started. Today we'll be talking on Azure Active Directory, which is also one of the coolest features that is provided by Azure Cloud. So let's not waste time, let's jump in. So creating Active Directory with Azure is very easy. We'll do that in a couple of steps, but before we do that, a few basics. So Active Directory is one of the coolest products from Microsoft, which is used by almost all the enterprises across the globe. So there are some sort of Active Directory being used. Basically, the base product is a domain services that is being driven. It drives all the users, and it is more from a corporate environment or enterprise environment. But what Microsoft has done is that they have extended this product into a more end user similar scenario where the similar set of services rather, can be used for your end user scenarios where you create a web app and there are a lot of end users which tries to log into your application. They can all use those services very similar to those. So the two products that we see on your screen, one is your Azure Active Directory and one is your Azure Active Directory B2C. So these are two different products, very much aligned on the same lines. So let's start. So we will not be focusing on Azure Active Directory, which is more of an enterprise grade security directory services. What we are looking today is more from the Azure B2C, which is more of an end user facing service. And if you want, we can discuss the Azure Active Directory as well. Just let us know in the comments and we can plan a video for that as well. Today we'll be working on Azure Active Directory B2C. So creating Azure Active Directory B2C is very easy. If you see right now, I have logged into my default account. It's not an Azure Active Directory B2C. If you need to create your Azure Active Directory, you just need to go over there, select create a resource, and here you can just type in B2C, which will pop up a list, and here you see. So guys, whenever we create Azure Active Directory B2C, it's always a two-step operation. First step is creating the actual directory and then we link it to an active subscription. So if you already know, subscription is something which is very much basic that is and required for billing and everything. So what we will do is we will first create a Active Directory B2C. So what I will just type in the name of my organization name and let's call it let's do Managed Identities. And we have to select a domain name. So domain name serves multiple purpose. It helps you isolate your resources. It provides logging mechanism as complete separate environment, a separate domain which can be used. So let's try something. Let's do coding identity demo. Let's see if this is available or not. It should be. Yeah, so this is available and we will press the review and create. It will show us a gist of what we have selected and we can do a create button. So guys, once we have done this, what we need to do is we need to link this subscription. We will need to link this to our subscription that is actively running. So let it create. It will take a while and once this is done, then we will again go back to a new Azure resource and then there we will be having the option of linking that. So it will just come up in a minute. So this is the screen where we need to link it, but the subscription is not created yet. As you can see over there, it is being created. The tenant is actually being created, and once it is created, then only we can move into further. Okay, so we have the tenant ready. Let's try to link it. So linking it is very easy. It's just you have to do a quick selects over there, and okay, so we have the new identity demo that we have just created. We need to select that, and we have the subscriptions that we need to select. I will select my sub one, let's say, and we can create a new resource. You can select the resource locations. Where do you want it? So I'll just keep the defaults one over here, and I'll press create. So creating Azure B2C, it's actually very easy. You don't need to do a very heavy lifting over here. As we see, there were multiple steps that were being involved while we were doing it with the AWS Cognito. Creating it is much Creating it is very much easier with Azure. Now again, if you need to switch, so more from a high level perspective, whatever operations that we do, they always work in a layer of an Azure Active Directory. So the current user that I have logged in, whenever I create a new account, an Azure account, defaults Active Directory is created where the users are created and they can work on. So now, if I need to move on to my new directory, so directory and Azure Active Directory, they are all analogous. We will be using either of these terms. So the next step is like we need to switch to our newly created Active Directory, and how we do that? It's very easy. We need to click over here on the top right, and there we need to select the switch directories option. Azure suggests that you log out and log in to reflect, but we will do a quick refresh just to get all the directories over there, and we can click the switch directory button over here. And here you will see we will be having our managed identities demo directory over here. So I'll just select this managed demo directory. It will take a while. It will redirect it. Actually, in itself, it takes a whole iteration cycle. And if you might have monitored the URLs over here. So here we are. And now let's start. Let's go option by option first. And then we can see like wherever required, we can do the customizations. So let's start. So again, process is same. We select over here B2C. Within B2C, we will be having different options. So one more thing I like to show is like within B2C, there are a few options over there. And if we move to Azure Active Directory, you will see a lot of options over there. So right now we are targeting more on the B2C parts. So first option, let's try with the overview. So overview gives you a very brief summary. What is subscription ID? What is your resource name? And what is your domain name that you're using? So let's go move to the next one. Okay, so we will move to the app registrations later. Let's skip a step further and then we'll return back. So the first option you see is your identity provider, and you see there are a whole lot of options over here that with which you can use your different identity providers. For example, you have Amazon, you have Facebook, you have Google, you have LinkedIn, you have Microsoft, Twitter. All those options are by default available without any customizations required from your part. So if you know, like most of these systems, they work on OAuth, and what OAuth requires is like you need to have a client ID and client secret. So there are different steps that within each of these platforms which you need to use to generate your client ID and client secret. But more or less the steps remain same. So like let's say if you open Google over here, so you will see like it will ask you client ID and client secret. Likewise, let's cancel this and try to see if what we get from LinkedIn. It should also be similar. Each of these systems have more or less very similar interface. So what we will do is let's try to add a few dummy systems, and let's call it Google login and test and test. So what it will does, it will not actually work when you do that, but it will allow or enable the options in the login and sign up page. So we'll get a more better feel like how to integrate that. And if you want to move from here to an actual integration, the only change that you need to do is to get these values correct. So there are a lot of resources. Just need to Google it out. The very first link that will come up. So you just need to select the client ID and client secret, generate it over there, and put it over here. Very, very, very simple. Nothing more. And the origin and callbacks URL. So this is what this is. LinkedIn. Let me add it. This as well. One second. So I'll enable this as well. So this is something that we are going to see, like once we go on a sign up or a login page, there these options will be enabled. Okay, moving to a next option, company branding. As the page might sound very similar, here you can default, you can provide all the logos and files that you want to see that should be shown onto the users. If you have custom branding and everything, you can go there and you can select the background image that needs to be shown. Then you have the banners and username, password, and everything customizable from the sign up and login page. So that all we can define over here. Moving to the next part, it is very interesting. Just like we saw in Cognito, we also have a lot of options for user attributes. So quite a few of them are already provided by the system. They are system generated or built in as called by Azure, but we can also add. So we will again add the same one that we added over there. So let's call it user age, and it's a number, and description is user age. Let's write it. So it's also very easy, nothing difficult over here. Just create a user attribute and we'll see over here. So here it is, our user age attribute. Okay. So we move next. Users, we will come back in a minute. Or other, let's go into users. So whenever you create a new directory, you will see the default user. That is my current user that is already reflected by default. Whenever you want, we can create new users, new guest users directly, or whenever the users sign up on your application, they will also be shown over here. So again, then we have deleted user, password reset. What are the options available to user? Do they allow it or not? So, and beyond that, we have authentication methods and others. So those all are standard options that you can try to see or change. Let's move into user settings. So this is quite interesting. Here you need to, can the users create new app registrations? So we don't want them. We are assuming that our app is a standard web app where the user just sign up and do their work. They don't need to create new apps over here. So we'll select no over here, and we don't want to provide the access to the Azure AD as well for the end users. So we'll just set it to no, and we will save it. So we are almost done on the users part. Let's move back to the previous step and see what other options are there. So users and roles and administrators, that is quite easy. So all of these are the roles that are provided by the Azure by default for account operations. So let's skip that. Now this is these two options that you see, the policy in the policies option, the user flows and the identity experience framework. So these are very much important. So it's more or less we are doing the same thing but in a different way. One is the very simpler one, that is the user flows, and the other one, that is the identity experience framework, that is a bit more of the advanced options. So what we do here, we define a journey, like how should actually the user journey would look like when they sign into your or log into your application. Now it could be a sign up, it could be a sign in, it could be a profile reset, it could be a password reset. All those options are there, but how should the pages look like? So what we do is like let's create a new user flow because we don't have. Now you see over there are a whole lot of options just like what we talked about. So let's try to do into the sign up and the sign in one. So again, we will go with the recommended way, which is a more later way of doing the operations, and we press the create option over here. We need to pass in a name to this. Let's call it default. Now I need to define which of the authentication providers I need to allow. So I can select Google, I can select LinkedIn, and I can select my email, which is the default one. And then are the MFA methods. So again, like just as we have in Cognito, SMS and voice calls are being charged. So if you are good with it, of course, as in a production environment, you should go for it. For the sake of this demo, we will just be using the email one. And conditional MFA enforcement, we will set it to a conditional one only. We don't enforce it for the time being. If you want to enforce it, you can set it to always on, like should the MFA be required or not. And likewise for the MFA method, you can also set to SMS or call. We will move into settings in a detail in a minute. Now, next part of this is quite important. It tells us like what are the different attributes that are required when we sign up or log in using this page, part one. Second part being like what are the different parameters out of these that should be returned back when the user signs in. So what we will do, if you click over here, you will see like there are plenty of options over here that we can add. And here is our custom option that we just created. So I'll select both of these options, and I'll select the object ID as well. And let's try to add a few more. Let's select the user city, country, and display name. Let's select the email as well, and we select the given name, and we might need it, we might not need it. Let's leave it apart. Let's press the OK. So you see these are all being selected over here, and apart from that, we just create the. So this will create the basic flow when the user signs up or signs in. He can use these flows to enter into the system. Okay. So what I have done is I have opened this again, and you see over here like all the settings that we have defined, multi-factor authentication, age gating, password complexity, and everything. So they are all being here that are being used. We can of course change them. For example, like password complexity is one part where we might need some customizations. So we can go into the properties from there or from here sub menu, and here you see all the options are required there. Let's move to the password first. So you can have a simple, you can have a complex or a strong one. You can define a legacy or custom. In custom, if you see, we can have numbers only, all, and a combination of like whatever how you want it. So there are a lot of options that you can change and customize. So let's leave the defaults with the strong, or let's call it simple one. For minimum 8 characters, maximum 64 characters, and let's create a custom one, and minimum length to 5, and must contain any two of the. So this should work out. And besides the password complexity, the other options are like what is the session behavior, how long the session should be alive, token settings over there, lifetime, and all those settings like you can configure from here. So this is quite good. We can press the save button over here, and let's wait for a minute for it to save. Yes. Okay, so one more thing over here, like once the page is saved, we can also run a run user flow. We can use this button, and it will give us an OAuth endpoint. So if you have already seen the previous videos, you know like what is the discovery endpoint, and it will have all those settings like what is the issuer, authorization, token, endpoint, and everything. So these are being defined, and you will also see like whatever the claims that we have selected over here. So they are also being shown over here, so that we can also do. Okay, it's fine. Let's see the identity providers that we have already seen. We have selected the all the three that we have selected over there, and we can select user attributes, yes, that we have already seen, and the claims. Now coming to the page layouts, this is an interesting page where you can customize the actual how the page would look like. For instance, let's say a new user comes to your application and he tries to sign up. So what will he see? So when a local user sign up page, he will see all these different options that we have asked the system to collect. So they will all be there. Likewise, if he does a social sign up from Google or Facebook, in that case, he will also see similar options over here, so that we can customize. Now all the settings are optional. We can change all these parameters. There's a whole lot of customizations that are being available, so that we can change over there. Part one. Second part being like we can change like how the system should look like. It should be a drop down, it should be a text box, it should be a number box. So, and along with that, if you see over there, like what are the different options for country, we have a whole lot of options that we can select. So these are also there, and this is actually quite handy over there, like once we have provided different options. Okay, so this part is done. Lightweight, we have the multi-factor authentication. So all of this, so these are the standard pages that are provided by default. But let's say if you want to create your own pages, so you can also use the custom pages as well. So that is also there. Languages, I think we have English. We can add some more languages. Let's add, where is that? Add Spanish. So first we need to enable the language customizations. Let's do that. Okay. And then we can select them. So let's select Spanish, where it is. Okay. So here are all the resources that we can customize or override. So these are the resource files or the XML files, I think, which it takes for customization, and we can use that. So let's skip that. We don't need any utilization for now, but maybe in an environment scenario you would require. Now coming to this identity experience framework. So this is again a bit more of a complex scenarios. You have to define everything in an XML, and these policies will define like how the token would be generated, how the token would be validated. All those settings can be defined and validated from here. So we'll not. It's a whole world in itself, and probably outside the scope of this video. So we'll not. We will probably try to touch this up in an upcoming different video. So let's move it out. And so that's, I think we are done more or less on this part. Apart from user reviews, company branding, so these we have already done. Now coming to the applications. So as we saw in AWS Cognito, and again I would request, if you have not seen the previous videos, you could just if you, even if you are not implementing it, just have a view over it. You will get some bits of complex. You will get some bit of concepts over there. So what we do is like for every application, just like we have when we enable the Google and Facebook social logins, probably basically. So at that point of time, we define the client ID and client secret. So whatever happens is like we define a application that has a client ID and that has a client secret, which we log into the system. So what we do basically the development application, the .NET application that we are trying to integrate in this part, in the later part of this video, there we will need to add these client ID and client secret, which we generate over here into that particular settings, so that the Azure will know like which user or which application is trying to access. Is that secure? Is that legible, legit application or not? So it will use those settings. So the Azure does know like if it's a legit application or not, and it use those settings. So let's create a new application and let's call it web app login, and we'll keep the default settings. And again, as you might have seen, we will keep the local host and followed by 5001. This is the default port number when you're running the HTTPS with .NET Core. And we will use this, and let's try it. So once the application is registered, it don't take actually much time over there. So you will see over there. So I'll quickly open a notepad and note down these settings. So let's create the client ID over here. Yes. And what we'll do is like we need to create the client secret. So that are available from here, client certificates and secrets. So we can use an H509 certificate, or we can use a client secret. So we will do a client secret. What we'll do is like we need to define. So this is an additional setting over here. So we can by default define like what will be the validity of these certificates, be it 1 year, be it 2 year, or like ever going without any expiration. let's call it default secret and expires in 1 year, and let it create, and we'll copy the secret value. So we'll copy this as well, and then API permissions. So APIs we have already seen where we earlier used like the read and the write APIs. So similar concept is here as well. What we can do is we can define and expose an API, and we can add multiple APIs. So before we do that, again we need to define API namespaces or the URIs which are there. So let's call it web app APIs. Take a while, and now we can create the permission. Read and once that is done, we will add the scope. So let's add only one, and likewise if required we can add more scopes as well, but for this we will use it, and then we can go to the API permissions and what API should my application expose, or basically what it can be accessed, so that we need to select. So from here we can add an permission, and there we need to go into my APIs, and within that you will see the login app that we just created, and within there is our permission. So let's select that. Okay, so one more thing that we need to do is we need to grant rights to it. So that is also very easy. Grant admin consent and done. Okay, so this part is done, and we secret line secret. Okay, so I think we are done for most of the part. This part we have already defined. We are not going to we are not using implicit grant again because we are using OpenID Connect for a backend application. If you are using a front-end application, a React application, or let's say a JavaScript Angular application, in that case, you need to use the implicit grant where the tokens are being forwarded via URI and not via form post. So let's we don't need to change anything over here, and I think we are good. Just we will quickly try to see if anything is left out. Manifest. So this is the application. Okay. So let's go back. Okay, so I think we are done with most of the part on the Azure side, and there it included. Now let's move into the backend application and try to see like what changes we need to do over there. So again, I'll just say create a new project, and it will be a default ASP.NET Core web application with framework .NET Core 3.1, and let's call it Azure AD B2C. Okay, this should work, and let's see. So again guys, if you're using like just the way we talked in the starting of this video, we can select Azure Active Directory as well. So if you're using that, you can directly select these options from here. But let's try to do it from the scratch, and we're using Azure Active Directory B2C. So what we'll do, let's leave the default settings over here and replicate it. It will take a while to create the new project. Until the time it returns, let's pause it. Okay, so we have our app up. We have created default app. Now again, the first step is to go on the startup.cs file, and that's exactly what we are going to do. And before we do that, we need to add a few packages, just like we did in the AWS Cognito. Again guys, we are not using the standard packages that are being provided by Azure or your AWS Cognito, because we don't want to be freeze to a particular provider. That's why using the default OpenID Connect standard based libraries to connect, and to do that we'll just need to go into Solution Explorer and managed needed packages, and there we will get the option. Okay, so we're going to browse and we select Microsoft Authentication. Microsoft ASP.NET Core Authentication, and we need to select a few packages. One is your OpenID Connect, and the other one is your cookies. Let's install this as well. We are done with both, and next step is very much easy. Again, first of all, we have to use the authentication and then add the authentication. Using them is very easy. Services, use, add authentication. Here it is. And dot add keys. Then add OpenID Connect, and that's it. Now we need to customize it. Just if you remember, something like this, and here we default we need to define a name and just like this we do this for OpenID Connect. Name will change, of course, and we pass in a lambda. So this is pretty much it. Now again, we need to add the default ones that we have added for the signing and the other schemes. So that will quickly add. So we will authenticate using cookies, and we will again sign in with that as well. But the login prompt that has to be taken care by our OpenID Connect. So here we will define OpenID. So that should work out. Now coming to this part, so this part is very easy. We need to define the basic ones, options dot client ID, and that is something that we have already recorded previously, which is this one. Okay, now the next step would be client secret, and parents. Okay, now we need to add options dot scope dot add, and first will be your OpenID. And one more thing over here is like there's generally sort of less documented or undocumented part is like we need to add the one of the scope as your client ID as well. Otherwise, you will get weird errors. So we will add scopes dot add, and again we will add option dot client ID. So we'll just pass in one of the scope as that as well. Now this is done. Okay, and we need to save the tokens, so that just like in the previous video, so that it's available for the applications use outside of this as well. So I think we are done. We need to do a few more things. OpenID dot response type, and that will be your code. Okay, and that is done. And okay, so let's try to quickly see like how this works out, and that we can do using the putting just one keyword over the controller name, and that is your authorize. So this will pipeline everything that is required to run the complete auth cycle. You can directly use that. Now, before we do that, we also need to use the authentication. Like previously we have added it, now use it. So let's try to change from IIS Express to your default console based application, and let's try to see how does this works out. Okay, so the application is started, and wait for a time for it to get started. Okay, and we have some errors. And what are the errors? provide authority. Okay. So we have not provided the authority that is required. Okay, so we have an error for authority, and to find out the authority, we have to get the authority URL. And as you know, we need this is the issuer or the provider of a token who confirms the authority for that, and I think that is very easy. We just store here. Now to get the value for that, what we need to do is we need to go into the app registration, the app that we created, and there you can go into the endpoints. So within the endpoint, you will see there's an endpoint called configuration endpoint. So just copy it and paste. So authority is the complete URL without the overriding configuration suffix. So we will remove this part, and there's a placeholder that we need to change for which policy we are running that, and this can be fetched from where? It can be fetched from here. So I'll just select the name of my default policy and put it over here. Now let's try to run and see like how does it work out. It will take a while to start up sometimes. Let's try to go to the privacy, and hopefully we should see a very beautiful page from Azure that allows us to log in. And yes, here we are. Now we can do a sign up, we can do your using the social logins. So if you remember, we put some dummy values, and so that if we press to try to do using the social login, we will get some error. Yeah, the old client was not found. Likewise for LinkedIn as well, we will get the passed in client ID is invalid, ABC which you passed. So if you get the valid IDs by creating the account and creating an app over there, so it will work flawless. So let's try to sign up a new user and see like how the flow will look like. Okay, so we need to pass in an email. Let me add. Let me send this to you. I will wait. I will switch the app to a different mode to get the code here and press the verify code. Yes, and let me add some password, and it should give me an error. And okay, so this is what we have selected. We have to be 5 to 64, the length that we selected. Then again, two of these combinations. So let's change it. And why it is giving me an error? Okay, that is fine. Now these are all the fields, if you remember, that we have selected manually as a user attribute. They have to be passed in. So let's select these. Let's put something over here. India. And let's do the create. So that should create an app and it should log me in. Let's see. We are logging in and it should return back, and yes, we are logged out. So what I will do at this point is I'll quickly do some changes within the views so that we'll get to see more comprehensive look like how these pages are being looked. So just give me a minute and I'll do that. Okay, so we are done with the changes, and if you need more details on the like what changes, we have basically changed the views layout of the application. So views are like how the pages does look like. So we have changed the shared and the privacy view that we have changed out, and apart from that, we have added a logout controller within our application. So this is being added as a new element. So apart from that, everything is same. If you need the source code, we have the link to GitHub repository in the description. You can have a look over there. So what we will do is, like, let's try to build it. There should be some errors. Yes, there are, and we need to change. So what we need to do is we need to go into errors page, and let's do this. And now it should build. And now let's try to see if we see the tokens over there. Mhm. Okay, so why are these not coming? Okay, so these are not coming because we have passed those as view badges and we are not setting these right. So we have to do it from here. And if you see over there within the view, we are using the view badges, viewbadge.id token. So let's quickly set these, and we have to use the await over here. Likewise, we will also set for the access token. Yes, now we should see something over there. Let's try to run it again. Let's set a breakpoint as well just to see like what claims are being written, because we need to select the username that we need to show. So why it's not running? So let's put a breakpoint over here and see the user object as well. I'll go again to the tokens page, and there let's try to see what's the user object. And if you see over there, we have one identity and 9 claims, and all these claims are being provided. If you see, we have the city, we have the country, we have name, and everything that is being coming up. Now again, if you need the user identifier or username, in that case, you can use the names identifier this particular claim. But we want to show it in a more friendly way. How does it look like? So what we'll do is we will use the name for the user, and for that we'll just say name to it. And how do we do that? If you recall, basically we need to set in the name claim type. So that is done in startup.cs and over here. Okay, so to do that again, it's a token validation. So what we will do is token validation parameters equal to new token validation parameters, and we select the name claim type equal to simply name. And now what we need to do is we need to log out and log in to reflect these changes. Let's try to do that, and it should work for us. Let's try to do a logout and login, and let's see. So it should log in ideally. Yes, and now if we try to see the same user object again, we will see like user name is beneath the other, so that is by default set. Previously it was null, and that is something that we should see in the title bar, and the claims are perfect. Let's try to press an F5 and everything works. So we have the username over here, and we have logout links and the tokens over here. Okay, let's try to view the tokens as well, like what values are being included. So first we will go with the identity token, then we will see the access token. So within the identity token, you see all the fields or the claims that we have selected that should be written. They are being provided. They are over here, city, user, age, and everything. And just like the same, if we select the identity token, if you select the access token, that should something like this. That should look something like this. Okay, so that is done on the application side. We have a fully functioning end-to-end scenario, end-to-end demo for identity provider that we need to use. Now let's see like the user, this new user that is being created. How does it look like in the Azure portal? So for that, we can go again into the users sections. And if you see all users, you will see we have our new user right over here. Yes. So this is our new user, and you see we have all these parameters that are being set for the user. So they can be set and they can be customized. So guys, that's pretty much for the scope of this video. We will try to cover up a few more concepts around Azure Active Directory that includes your MFA settings and using custom domain. How do you actually use your site domain with Azure Active Directory rather than your on Microsoft.com domain. So that we'll try to cover. Apart from that, we will have a few more videos coming on Auth0 and some other complex integrations and challenges that we will be highlighting that. And one of them is your we created the Tornado hands-on lab for end-to-end demo. But let's say if you want to do app-based user management or restrictions, so how can you do that? So that we'll try to cover up. So these are all lined up. I'll request you guys to, if you like the video, press the like button. If you have any of the queries, just put down in the comments box and I'll get back to you. And please guys, subscribe to our channel to support us. If you really like this video, do like and subscribe. And we will be posting more videos that are upcoming in the cloud segment, in the managed identities. And if you have any questions, just let us know. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. See you soon.